This is really intended for people that are using EODIR.
I don't know if we need to close the door, but you can usher people in.
Okay. Oh, that is really loud. So I'd like to go ahead and get started. And right smack on time, which is a little bit unusual. Anyway, so I'd like to welcome you to the IETF. This is the new participants overview. It'll give you a rough idea of the structure of the week and some of the organization of the IETF. It's definitely not going to answer all your questions. Feel free to ask questions during the session or after the session, or to follow up in any other way. There's three of us that are going to be presenting that to you. I'm Karen O'Donohue. I've been working on the education and outreach team for a while. I chair a couple working groups here, and I've been coming to the IETF for a very long time at this stage. Second, we will have Rich Sauls. He can tell you more about himself now or later, but he's also a longtime participant and a working group chair as well. He's also very familiar with the NOMCOM process. If you're interested in any more questions about that, you can talk to him about NOMCOM. And come on in. And finally, we have Michelle Cotton, who works with the Secretariat now, and she is the one who you will have probably received a number of emails from regarding our newcomer program, new participant program. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And oh, hold on a sec. I did exactly what I told myself I shouldn't do, which was excellent. So I tested the remote, and then I promptly moved away from the window where the remote would actually work. So I've already covered this in a little bit of detail, but this is our overview for today. And we will get moving because we usually end up taking up the whole time. So the expectations for this presentation, this is general information about the IETF and its organizational structure. There is a lot more information there, and the IETF in particular has been doing a lot of work updating the website and trying to make it more user-friendly and more accessible. So please feel free to take a look at that. Information that will be immediately useful to you during your first IETF and not everything that you need to know about the IETF. It does not cover the history of the IETF. There is also a lot of information about that. There's also a series of presentations from Scott Bradner that you can find on YouTube and on the IETF channels that can give you some additional information about the history of the IETF. It does not cover how to write a standard, and it does not cover many, many things. This is really just to get you started. So the first thing is that you will see this quite a bit throughout the week. This is the IETF Notewell. You agreed to this when you registered for the meeting. All of your participation in the IETF is governed by a set of processes and rules and expectations about behaviors. So if you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask. But any email that you send to a mailing list, any comments that you make at a microphone in a meeting, all of these are governed by the rules of the IETF. This is also attached to the Notewell, and it's a list of best common practices. BCP stands for best common practice. And these are related to the working group and processes associated with the IETF. So the next thing, you might sometimes hear people talk about blue sheets. We used to have physical blue sheets that we passed around to track attendance. Now what we use is the MeetEcho system. So MeetEcho is the tool, and you'll have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about that, but that's the tool that supports all of our meeting. So whether you are here physically or whether you are remote, you participate in the meeting by joining MeetEcho. You can use a slim client on your phone that allows you to get in the queue and get out of the queue and to register your attendance, or you can use the full client, whether you're remote or even if you're in the room, if you want to follow along with what's visually happening. If you haven't done so, this is sort of a test. Everybody scan your QR code, register yourself for the meeting. As a reminder, you will need a data tracker account to do that. You needed a data tracker account to register for the meeting. So, and if you have any questions or comments, we can see now that, I actually can't see the statistics, but how many, do we have, is our number increasing? Does it look like we have roughly
In this room,
in this room?
we have about 50.
Excellent. So we have about 50 people that have registered, so it looks like most of you were able to do that successfully. There is a session following this that is a more detailed MeetEcho presentation that goes into all of the various things to help you get to use MeetEcho more effectively. You will also, if you participate in any interim meetings between the major IETF meetings, or if you're remote, MeetEcho is a very key tool for you to understand. And then this is the quick how to ask a question in a session. As a result of going through the pandemic, and since then, we have really tried to equalize remote participation with in-person participation. And so the chairs of a session, and in this case, it's the three of us, manage what's called the queue. And in order to join the queue, you raise your hand. And so you can see the hand symbol right there. So you push that to join the queue, and then you push it to get out of the queue. And with that, the next thing that this basic first part is all administrative things that help you physically in the meeting. You will see lanyards and buttons and pins and dots, and all of these things have a meaning. But there is somebody in the queue. Does Lucas have a question? Nope, Lucas got out of the queue. He's practicing to test the button. So with that, there's two colors lanyards. It's red and white this time, right? We did. So white is, these have to do with photography and photographic permissions. If you do not wish to have your picture taken in an individualized way, group shots, you've already agreed to have your picture taken, but if you do not want your picture taken individually, then we do usually have a cameraman on site and wear a red lanyard. If you're wearing a white lanyard, it means basically you have agreed to be in pictures. Pins. These also grew out of the pandemic. There's the green square, the yellow triangle, and the red octagon. It's not 8 sides, it's only 6. 1, 2, 3. I can tell I've forgotten my geometry. That's kind of embarrassing. Anyway, so red means basically don't touch me at all. Yellow means I'm a bit cautious, so elbow bumps, and green is you don't mind personal contact. Language buttons, and we've already seen a few of them in here. There's a whole set of language buttons there. If you speak another language, feel free to put a button on, indicate which languages you can communicate with. And these are all ways to make you better integrated, better attached to the community and find the right people to chat with. All right, so the first section is the overview of the IETF. So the mission of the IETF, which is to make the internet better, and it's basically to do that by developing high quality, relevant technical documents that impact the way we design, use, and manage the internet. Anyone can participate. All of the work is available for free. Contributions are judged primarily on technical merits, and success, we have no authority as the IETF to mandate people implement or not implement things, so success is determined by adoption and deployment of the standards. That's why in particular we're interested in feedback from operators and trying to get operators into the community, also feedback from developers. If you were part of the hackathon for the last 2 days, you saw some of that. So what is the IETF? The IETF is first and foremost a standards development organization. You are basically it's self-selected individual participants, so there's no formal membership, there's no pay-to-play type of thing. It's driven by market-based adoption. Governments and other entities can take standards and make them required in their context, but the IETF does not mandate standards. It's focused on the internet technology, so generally anything, like your wireless, a lot of those standards are done by IEEE. Your web and above, those are generally done by W3C. And the piece in the middle, sort of the core of the internet, that's all done here. Most decisions are done by rough consensus, and we'll talk a little bit more later about rough consensus. And there's no formal role for governments, but there is definitely a role for individual participants that come from the government. The funding model for the IETF, people often ask about this. So where does the IETF get the resources to actually operate not just the physical meetings in person, but all of the infrastructure and all of the support that happens all year round, and all of the tools and all of the staffing and all of that. It comes from a number of sources. The registration fees for this meeting make up only a small portion of it. There's also donations, individual donations. There are corporate contributions, and you'll see a number of different categories here that different companies have sponsored things that they're passionate about. Also, the Internet Society, the IETF LLC, the organization that represents the IETF, is a subsidiary of ISOC, and ISOC has a long-term agreement through which it's currently funding over 50% of the IETF. Generally speaking, if you go to the plenary on Wednesday evening, a lot of the administrative details and budget and status and all of those kinds of things are reported out in that session. So the IETF is not a pay-to-play type of SDO, and there's no mechanism to buy any sort of formal role. Organizationally, this is the big picture for the IETF. The vast majority of it here is the IESG, the Internet Engineering Steering Group, and all of the working groups that are part of that. So there's a number of areas which we'll get to later. Those areas are organized into, those areas contain a number of working groups, and those working groups, the leaders of each of those those areas get together to form the Internet Engineering Steering Group. So that's your leadership structure. Not sure. Next is the Internet Research Steering Group and the IRTF, which is the research portion. So the engineering work is done in the IETF, the research work is done in the IRTF, and the leaders of each of those sets of groups are the steering groups associated with them. There's an Internet Architecture Board, which does general architecture and strategy discussions for the IETF, and they also maintain all of the IETF's external relationships. So any liaisons that we have with other organizations for, like the IEEE or ITU or anything like that, all of those liaisons and those liaison relationships are managed through the IETF, through the IAB, the Internet Architecture Board. And then finally, there's the Administrative LLC. So the LLC does all of the work to manage the contracts for the IETF. They sign the contracts for all of the staffing, and they do the funding and the budgeting and all of the business aspects of the IETF. All of these groups will be reporting out in the context of Wednesday's plenary. So I'll give you a better context from how they all work. So I mentioned the areas. These can change over time, and in fact, quite recently, there was a little bit of change. You can see the star with applications area and the web and internet transport area. There was some reorganization there to represent what the current work of the IETF looks like, but these are the areas that it's currently looped into. And there are 2 or 3 area directors that manage each one of those areas, and there are a number of working groups in each of those areas, and then all of those area directors are organized into the IESG that I mentioned earlier. So talk a little bit about IETF and consensus. We did mention that the IETF is a consensus-based organization. The old saying from years ago is we reject kings, presidents, and voting. We believe in rough consensus and running code. There is a RFC 7282, which describes a rough consensus for the IETF. It's achieved when all of the issues are addressed, but not necessarily accommodated. So we hear the dissenting opinions, but they don't necessarily stop the work. There are a number of ways to measure consensus. There's MeetEcho polls and a polling tool that's built into MeetEcho. There's also hand raising can sometimes be used. Humming is sometimes used. These are ways to measure consensus in a room, and they're not necessarily voting. If you've participated in IEEE, for example, IEEE 802, I know I've done a lot of work there. There's an actual, you have voting members, and the voting members vote on things. That's not done here. It's the session chair is responsible for determining consensus. Consensus also is generally, for a working group, gone back to the mailing list. So it's not just the people that are physically in the room or physically online for the meeting, but most major consensus calls also involve participants from the mailing list. So to join a working group and to contribute to any existing work that's ongoing, you'll see this several times throughout the week, but the data tracker is our key repository of everything, of all of the working materials for the IETF. It has all of the drafts and the history of the drafts. And it also has all of the meetings, meeting minutes, and all of those kinds of things. And then it has descriptions of each working group. So if you go to the data tracker and you look at a working group page, you can find things like, about, and about will tell you the name of the working group and who the co-chairs are currently, and any additional resources that they might have, like a GitHub repo or things like that, are all listed on the data tracker page. So review the page to see if it's work that you're interested in. And then if it is, you can join the mailing list. Review the documents that are currently in progress. And if you go to the Documents tab, you can see all of the current working group adopted documents that are ongoing, all of the RFCs that working group has published, and any individual contributions that have been submitted but not necessarily adopted by the working group. So you can see, you can distinguish between the things that the working group as a whole has agreed to work on. Those are working group documents versus things that people have contributed. If you have any questions, you can always contact the chairs of the working group and they'll get back to you with answers on that. So oftentimes, not always, but a lot of times people that are new participants to the IETF come because they are interested in how work, they've something that they wish to contribute and they want to know how to do that. So as you've probably been alluded to, the IETF is a contribution-driven process. So you can't come here and say, I think you should go work on this and solve my problem for me. You need to come to the IETF with, I have a problem, and I think I have a solution, and let's work on solving that problem. And then once you've figured out that you have a problem, you want to make sure that that problem fits within the scope of the IETF and that aligns with the architectural principles of the internet. And also, is the scope well-defined? If it's not well-defined, it might be research work. And otherwise, then maybe it is ready for the engineering process. And you need to find willing people to do the work with you. So you need to have some collaborators. There is a whole new web page that's been built up that talks about the new work process. It's new since the last IETF. I think it does a really nice job of detailing how work gets started in the IETF. So if you're interested in that at all, I strongly suggest you take a look at that link. But the basic steps are, is this within the scope of the IETF? Then you need to write an internet draft. If you're interested in writing an internet draft, probably, I meant to add this link and I forgot, but you need to document your ideas. And to do that, you would write an internet draft. There is an entire wiki page called authors.ietf.org. And that wiki page will tell you everything you need to know to get started to write an internet draft with the tooling, because the tooling is a little bit different. And then you need to socialize your participation with your contribution with other IETF participants and find collaborators and feedback. And once you've done that, then you can follow the process for possibly getting the work into an existing working group, possibly getting a new work item spun up, possibly doing an independent stream publication. There's a number of options there, but the first step is you need to document your ideas, socialize them, and figure out what might be the right track. Working group chairs and any of the IETF leadership are happy to talk to you about how that might happen. And so with that, I ripped right through all of that. Rich is going to talk about what an IETF meeting week actually looks like.
Okay. My name is Rich Sauls. I work for Akamai. People participate as individuals, as I think Karen said. The corporate affiliation or any academic is just for identification purposes. All right. I'm going to talk about what it's like during this upcoming week. I talk a little fast, but the week will go by fast, and at the end of it, you'll be overloaded and exhausted and fun, and can't wait to do it again 4 months from now. Okay, so the IETF is divided into working groups. We have about 130 or so. They don't all meet during this week. I think we have like 70 meeting or something like that. There's also birds of a feather sessions, which are informal, where someone is from the phrase birds of a feather flock together. Careful how you say that. And it has to do with, well, I'm thinking of doing something about what does it mean to do TCP IP in deep space, for example. So people who are interested in doing that would get together and meet. Sometimes they meet at a bar, sometimes they meet in a side meeting. And then eventually they'll work up and get to a formal working group. The IRTF is a companion organization. It's the Internet Research Task Force, as opposed to the Internet Engineering Task Force. There is also, one of the things they do every year is they give out a prize to the best internet technology related papers. They couple, they are at the open meeting, which is in the agenda. It says IRTF open. There is also, this time around, there's the AC joint meeting with the ACM, which is the Applied Networking Research something. I forget what the W stands for. Pardon me? Workshop. It's informal compared to a ACM or other computer society meeting, but it is a little more organized, more formal in that people are presenting discussion papers about the work that they've done, as opposed to interactive, trying to define new standards and so on. The hackathon is concluding. Michelle, one of her early meetings, pointed out the hackathon where you can help collaborate with other people and develop implementations of IETF specs or standards or drafts to help get along. The social event is not happening this year. Instead, the Secretariat, Michelle and company, are hosting a game night, board games. Apparently they have a lot of interesting games coming up. I think you see a little sign out by the registration, across the room from the registration desk. Tutorials, this is one of them. I think this is the only one this time. There's sometimes a lunch session if we have a sponsor. The sponsoring company gets to give a lunch session on, Apple talking about private browsing or something like that. Hot RFC, these are this evening at 8 o'clock, I think. I can't do 24-hour clock time anymore. You get 4 minutes to talk about something that you think might be interesting, or that you're looking for help, or so on. I'll be presenting there on a TLS topic. Also, side meetings. If you go to the agenda, there's a wiki where you can sign up and say, "Hey, I'm having a side meeting, not part of the formal IETF meetings, but I'm having a side meeting where we want to talk about what it's like to do TCP/IP in deep space," something like that. You move the mouse off the...
No, I'm in the right place.
All right, go back to the next slide, please. Okay, working group sessions. This is the biggest part of the IETF week. It's the reason why we come. Most of the work at the IETF is done on mailing lists. We have periodically polled the members of the IETF community and say, what kind of intercommunication skills do you like? And everyone says, yeah, mailing lists are okay. It seems to be a generational thing, but everyone's willing to do work on mailing lists. The face-to-face meetings of which this is one, we meet 3 times a year, are for where we get together and someone will say, well, this is what I've changed in my document since the last time we met, and here are the problems I still have to address, the open issues. The intent or the implied thing there is you have read the documents. So Karen pointed out to the data tracker page. You've read the documents. There's not going to be a tutorial. Pardon? Oh. There's not a tutorial on what this means, especially if it's on like version 27 of a draft. You don't have to read all the previous ones, but every draft is intended to be standalone. Someone will say, here's what I've changed, here's my open issues, and then we'll have some open discussion about how we might address those issues. All of those decisions made in the face-to-face meetings are confirmed on the mailing lists. The sessions are all streamed live video, and they're also recorded and made available after the fact for on our IETF YouTube channel.
Rich, we have a person in the queue.
Okay.
Potentially asking a question. Hadrian?
Or are you testing the, yeah, if you're just testing? Okay, cool. It works. The working group is intended to work on specific things. We have a charter that says this is what we're doing. For example, I'm the chair of the HTTP API working group, and our charter is to come up with, for the most part, JSON-related documents and practices to make it easier to develop web APIs, things that work over HTTP. Birds of a feather session, they're informal. There's 1 or 2 scheduled this time. It will say BOF in the agenda. It's notably marked. Maybe they'll have a proposed draft charter, but it's to get to see if there's enough interest as part of the new work process. They generally only meet once, sometimes twice if they don't have enough consensus or enough momentum to form a working group. IRTF, in the picture Karen showed, there was the IAB, the Internet Activities Board. They sponsor the research task force, the IRTF. Research projects, what does it mean to, I keep coming back to IP and deep space, but also things like what kind of new crypto algorithms are important or going to be important. Post-quantum is probably a word many of you have heard. We're looking at a lot of that. What does it mean to have global internet access for everybody? Gaia is the name of that group and so on. The research groups often meet at the same time. They're scheduled together the same way the IETF working groups are scheduled. All IETF meetings are open, all IRTF meetings and participation are open to all IETF members. There's a reference document, RFC 7418, that says, well, if you understand the IETF, here's how the IRTF works. Okay, there are area-wide sessions. For example, all of the security areas, SAAG, security areas, something group, I should know I'm part of it, meets once. There's the web and internet transport group is meeting this week. There's the plenary, which is from the Greek word meaning all of us. Nothing else is scheduled opposite the plenary, and as Karen said, that's where the various organizational entities will get up and say, oh yeah, thanks to ISOC for funding this. Our next meeting will be in Dublin. The sponsor for that is so-and-so. And yeah, here's a fundraising pitch. And then the technical leadership stands up, and then the people in the audience have a chance to ask them questions for a period of time. Hackathon, really cool. The number of people who participate in the hackathon is coming close to the number of people. There's a lot of overlap between the IETF. People can show up just for the hackathon. People show up just for the IETF. A lot of IETF people go to the hackathon to see their friends the day before everything starts. It's a way to flesh out ideas, give feedback into the working groups. Hey, this draft 18 said you have to have this bit 1 turned on. When I did that, every system in my network crashed. Okay, so maybe we'll fix that draft. It's at the weekend beforehand. As Karen mentioned, one of the mantras of the IETF is rough consensus and running code. The hackathon is where we start to develop a lot of running code. And it has greatly sped up the process by which IETF standards get implemented and put into products, prototypes, proof of concepts, and so on. Amelia, did you have a question?
Hi, Hadrian. With the hackathon, is that also where changes to data tracker might occur? Because I noticed a bug on data tracker and someone said something about the hackathon, but I didn't know much about what they were talking about at the time.
Changes to the data tracker also, that usually happens during the code sprint, yeah.
Yeah, the changes to the data tracker, there's a separate activity called the code sprint, which is where people modify and work on the data tracker, try to fix bugs that other people have found, try to fix bugs that they've caused and so on. That's also in the agenda, meets typically Saturday for most of the day. A smaller group of people compared to the hackathon, which might have a couple hundred in a large room. The code sprint people are 20 people or 12 people in a smaller room. Does that answer your question? Guess so.
I think so, it does.
Networking and social events, there are many spaces around our meeting areas where, in addition to the formal side meetings, there are chairs set up that you can just meet and talk to people. You should feel free in general if you're talking, particularly if you're talking about technology, about something. Oh, I just came from this working group and I had a question about something you said. Feel free. A lot of people have known each other for years and could be off-putting to interrupt and say something. But if you stand, near typical conference thing, you stand near someone and you catch their eye, happy to talk. We don't have a social event this time. This was the social event at the National Aquarium in Singapore a few years ago. They served sushi while we were looking at the fish. The Sisters is an organization of people who identify, present, or whatever as women. Open membership. They have a couple of social events during the week, 2 lunches or 1 or 2 lunches or a breakfast. One lunch and
One networking event.
one networking event. Okay. There's the list. Feel free to join and participate. General meeting etiquette. Okay, this is probably one of the more important slides to help you get the best out of the IETF the upcoming week. Read the documents of the things you're interested in. Karen showed how you can look at the about page of a working group and see what the group is working on. Then if you click on the documents tab on the working group, you'll see all the drafts that are currently in progress. If you stand up and you go, okay, I don't quite understand what you mean by the TCP options, that won't go over very well and will show your experience. But if you say, I don't understand how this option interacts with that option, you've obviously read the documents and your technical contributions are very valued at the IETF. Talk, listen to people. Good online meeting etiquette. I think, having lived through COVID, the world kind of understands how to do that. Test your configuration, mute your audio, turn the video off unless you're speaking generally. Some of the smaller meetings that are video, they want to see everybody's face. So, or if possible, so you can turn it on. Speak slowly and clearly. A problem I have. Okay, the resources that are available. We try very hard to make the IETF not only make the internet better, but also make the IETF better to get more contributions and more input from people. So there are a number of resources that will be available to you during this week and also beyond, because it's the IETF, you can always send email to somebody. The new participants, that's this group. Michelle coordinates sending out 4, 5, 6 mailings telling new participants what's coming on. Don't be shy if you have a question. Everyone wants to help. Everybody wants to really get input from people who have perspectives, design ideas, use cases that not everybody thinks of. A lot of people, the IETF is 30 plus years old, and a lot of people have been here from day one, several. So it's kind of off-putting. It can be to sort of bump into a decades-old friendship and say, hey, can you explain this or something? But feel free. Technical excellence is the most important thing. In the past, it has sometimes been at the expense of social graces, but we're trying to do better, right? We want to be friendly, encompassing, and welcoming. The badges, dots and ribbons. Chair means you chair a working group. The other colored labels show your organizational affiliation within the IETF. ANRW is the free registration for the networking research workshop. Most of you here probably have a red tag that says new participant. The only purpose of that, it doesn't convey any new special privileges, except you can see someone else and go, oh, you're here new too. How long did it take you to get here? You know, before you got crowd struck. There are other things. I did not, it's a great term, right? I didn't call it. Yeah, Canada for the win. There's also blank ribbons that you can write, you know, your own little cutesy phrases or so on the bottom of them if you want to. Somebody has like, I am the man in the middle. I void warranties, you know, those kinds of cute things. IETF Executive Director Jay Daly is hired by the IETF, paid to run the day-to-day operations. There is a board of directors that supervise, so you can think of him as like the president, but he's not, he's the director. The secretariat are almost all, not completely, women in the blue shirts. I forget, there's 2 or 3 guys. On Friday, when it comes time to sort of wind things down, they'll all be wearing Hawaiian shirts probably. But
No, tie-dye.
tie-dye, right?
Tie-dye
Yeah.
Friday.
Tie-dye Friday. So almost always, if you're confused about where to go or someone, and you see somebody wearing one of the blue shirts, you can ask them, say, where do I find this room or so on. They also host a lot of kind of sideline social activities. When we were in San Francisco, they actually ran a tie-dyeing contest, not contest, but operation. We have a board game night coming up on Wednesday evening. Everyone is welcome to attend, and so on. So they are the folks who like keep the process moving. The RFC editor might even be called RFC Production Center, but RPC is kind of an overloaded term. They're the people who publish our documents. There's a person in the back over there. So if you want to know where your RFC is in the queue, you can ask. IANA, many of the protocols have open holes. For example, in TLS, there's one of the numbers in the field, one of the fields is just a number that says, what's the cryptography you're using? IANA is the people who maintain the list of numbers. So that if somebody's using 17 and thinks it's RSA, and somebody is using 17 and thinks it's ROT13, those 2 things won't work, but you get the idea that somebody somewhere, and it's IANA, the people contracted, have to maintain that table. They also do a couple of things for ICANN, without which the whole network would fall apart. They will have tables near the registration area if you want to ask questions of them. Also, you can, if you look closely at the pictures, you can see they have little candies on top of their table. Stop by and get a snack. Harassment issues, harassment. We take harassment or lack of it, or don't do it, very seriously. If you have any questions, you can see some of the secretariat, you can talk to Jay, you can talk to somebody who's is in a tech leadership position, you know, wearing one of those colored dots. Ultimately, we have a team called the Ombuds team, as opposed to ombudsmen. These are the people on the team. Many of them are here this time. You can find one of them and say, hey, you know, so-and-so I feel uncomfortable by what was being said in one of these meeting rooms, and we will address it. The NOC, Network Operations Center, Karen is also on that. They come here the week before. They have site visits beforehand, but they come here the week before and set up. If you see all around the hallways and so on, there's these chairs with these little, you know, Wi-Fi connectors. They do that. We get a lot of donated equipment. The last IETF was in Australia. So if sometimes you bring up like Google Map and it thinks you're in Sydney, It's because the network numbers haven't changed to match the physical location yet. It sort of lags sometimes. But anyhow, NOC is great. If you have any problems about network connectivity, it doesn't seem to be working for you, or so on, email to support@ietf.org. They'll open a ticket, and things will be handled and addressed very quickly. I remember one time when we met and the network is named IETF. Pretty simple. If you need a password, it's IETF. So it's open access. We met in Montreal once. Some people were walking through one of the hallways in the underground shopping centers, and the woman goes, "I don't know where the IETF hotel is, but boy, do they have good Wi-Fi." MeetEcho, that's the bespoke tool, custom tool we use for the remote participation. If you haven't scanned on your phone the QR code, do that, because it's important to get the participation counts. It's also important that everyone gets registered to make sure there's no patent issues or intellectual property coming up that might be a problem. So you agree the note well, which will have been presented a few times at the beginning of every session, explains what your rights and your requirements are. And so the MeetEcho signing up through that gives us planning for next time and also agreement to abide by the rules. The data tracker, datatracker.ietf.org. It's also a DNS alias, dt.ietf.org. I type that all the time. Here you can see a page that is for one of the working groups, TLS, one of the ones I'm very involved in. You see the tabs up there. About will give you general information, what the charter is, what they're supposed to be working on, where the mailing lists are, how to join the mailing list, how to see the email archives. Everything we do is out in the open. Meetings will be, you can see like what happened at the IETF 119 in Australia and so on. You can see the history of all of that. Photos of the working group chairs. History is what's changed in the charter over the past few years. And then here's like, once you've joined a working group, and you join it by subscribing to the mailing list. And then here's a list of all the documents. You get an idea of how long they are. That's really big. But that, once you've started to participate, datatracker.ietf.org will be your home in the IETF. As I said, most of our work happens on the mailing lists. We have discussions, general working groups. There are some what's called non-working group mailing lists. For example, there was the scuba enthusiasts. I forget what else there was. The Sisters is an example of a non-working group mailing list. There is a IETF-announce, which you probably all should have been subscribed to automatically, that has, oh, here's where we're meeting, big announcements that are of concern to the whole IETF. There are meeting specific ones. So for example, 120-new participants. Everyone should have been joined to that if they were a new participant. Everything else, you can see the link at the bottom. These slides are available. If you look for the newcomers tutorial in the data tracker, you can get the hard copy of the slides or the soft copy, and then start clicking on links directly. Zulip is our chat server, instant messaging system, analogous to Slack but better. There's a Zulip section that describes it. It's integrated with the AV component of MeetEcho, so you can see the chat room. Everything is web-oriented and clickable links there. And with that, I will turn it over to Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you. Hello again, my name is Michelle Cotton. I'm the one who's been sending you lots of emails. Rich said about 6, but it has grown since I've taken over the program because of requests to remind people about the information, and as people register at different times, some register 2 months prior to the meeting, some people register a day before the meeting, try to make sure we get all that information to you. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the new participant activities here at 120. We have this session as the overview. It is going to be available in the proceedings, so if you need to refer back to any of this information, it's going to be available to you. Immediately following this session, we will have a Meet Echo test session. It's a very informal session. We're just going to be looking at all the buttons you use. You can practice joining the queue. And even people who are joining remotely, not in this room, welcome to join and practice, test your audio, test your video, just make you a little bit more comfortable with the tool, because that's something that you're going to get very used to when joining all of the working group sessions. This afternoon, we have what's called quick connections for new participants, and it's best described as speed dating. But it's where we have a bunch of tables in the room, and at each table we put an experienced IETFer, somebody who's been around, and it could be somebody in leadership, it could be a working group chair. And then new participants come in and they move from table to table, and it gives you an opportunity to talk to different people with different expertise, different interests, and you can ask questions. It's a good opportunity. Let's say there's an area director at one of those tables in an area that you're interested in. You can ask, hey, what working groups do you think I should go to, because this is what I'm interested in? Or really, it's just a chance to make some very quick connections, network a little bit, and your fellow new participants will also be there. It is a signing up event, and that's just due to limited space of the room. It was full as of right before this session started, but if you come on by and we feel like the space is going to be enough, you might be able to just, jump in and we can fit you in. Another thing that we do is we have a new participants dinner, which happens on Monday night. The dinner this time around is going to be in the hotel. This is not an IETF sponsored event. It's something the Secretariat puts on. And you can purchase a ticket. We just added a couple more spots a couple hours ago. So if you were looking to join and it was sold out, we have a couple more spots to fill. And it's just a chance. There's no agenda, there's no presentations. It's really just to network and meet your fellow new participants, enjoy a meal, and so yeah, if you're interested, please join us. And then on Thursday, we have a social hour in the early evening, and we invite the leadership of the IETF to come to that. And this is an opportunity for you to join. It's at the end of the week. And you can let us know, how was your week? What could we have done better? Was there anything missing in what you received as far as information in the beginning of your week that would have helped you? Or just ask questions, but it's a chance just to, relax, chit chat with everybody and provide us with a little bit of feedback of how did your week go. All this information is on the agenda, and also if you look back at the archives for the 120 new participants list, you'll see all the information there too. Other activities, immediately following Quick Connections tonight, we've got a welcome reception. There's going to be refreshments there. Hot RFC, Rich mentioned that. That's a fun session to go to, just to hear what people are cooking up as far as ideas that might come to the IETF. And we have the sisters networking, the plenary, and the sisters lunch. So some of the sessions change from meeting to meeting, depending on what's going on, but we've kind of come up with a regular set, and these tend to be the sessions. There was also something called a Pecha Kucha, which was like a lightning topic talk, but that actually got canceled if you saw that on the mailing list, and they're planning one for Dublin instead. And then, of course, if you're still not sure where to start, we understand there's a lot of information we're throwing at you. Check out the blog post. Greg Wood, who's the Director of Communications for the IETF, puts together a great document there to point out new topics, what's happening, pointing out what working groups you might be interested in during the week. It's a great place to start. Of course, just browse the agenda. on the agenda, you'll also see area director office hours. So for example, the security area will hold office hours. And so if you have a specific security area question, you can just drop in and talk to them, tell them you're new, this is what you're working on, or this is your goal for this IETF. Maybe they have some suggestions for you. Not all areas hold office hours at every IETF, but if you look at the agenda, you'll see who will be holding office hours at 120. We will be putting up a poster sign that says new participant meetup spot. And I'm going to send a message to the mailing list as soon as I figure out the best place to put that. If you're wanting to go to lunch and you want to try to gather some other new participants to go with you, it's a great place to just meet up and say, hey, let's go get lunch. There's the Zulip chat that Rich mentioned. And of course, you can always message the 120 mailing list, and it's there for your use as well, not only announcements. So feel free to always drop a question into the mailing list. I am sometimes at the registration desk and sometimes running around. So if you ever see me and you have a question, please feel free to always come up to me. If I don't know the answer, I will try to find you an answer. I will try to connect you with somebody if you're looking for a particular person. As Rich said, us in the blue shirts, we are here to help you. So just don't hesitate. And hey, Karen.
Sorry.
There we go. And the other thing is in addition to our registration desk, sometimes there will be office hours for a technical help desk. And that often will pop up if there's a change in the network and they realize people might be having some problems. They might have a technical help desk downstairs. Rich covered the RCEDR, the IANA desk, and of course, any harassment issues, please contact that ombuds team or somebody in leadership. And above all, we really want you to enjoy this week at IETF. I've been coming to IETF meetings since 2000. So along with Rich and Karen, we've been doing this a long time. It's really a fabulous place. It's amazing to know that all these wonderful things were created and they came out of the IETF. We use them every day. So it's really great that you're here. If there's anything we can do to help you, please let us know. And we will open the floor for questions. Anybody online, remote, feel free to put yourself in the queue and we will happily answer some questions.
This is just a clarification on something earlier that I meant to catch when Rich said it. The sisters group is actually for anybody who identifies as female or non-binary in any way. So the scope of it has been expanded a bit.
Okay. Any questions? Looking in the queue. Yep. Okay, as we said earlier, there's going to be a Meet Echo test session immediately following, starting in, I don't know what the time is, 7 more minutes. So until then, have a wonderful week, and hopefully we'll see you later at Quick Connections and throughout the week. So thank you. Oh, Karen's got one more.
Sorry, I've got one more in case you have not been following the chat. If you're interested in the slides, materials for the meeting, for each session, there's a little red box with a PDF symbol on it. And that's where you can get all of the materials for that meeting. That means all the slides and things that are associated with it. For some reason, that button is not there right now for this session, but it should be because I just submitted a ticket to get it fixed. So if you're interested in the slides, they're there. I did post the direct link to the slides in the chat. So if you really want them, if you pop onto the chat now, you can get that information. So apologies for that, but we'll get that fixed.
All right, thank you, everybody.